Welcome back, everyone. I am Cas Piancey. I'm joined, as usual, by my partner in crime, Mr. Bennett Tomlin. How are you today?
I'm doing well. How are you, Cas?
I'm doing great. We're joined by one of our favorite guests, Ed Zitron, who hosts the Better Offline podcast and writes Where's Your Ed At? And runs Easy PR. Ed, how are you today?
I'm doing great. I'm fantastic.
Cool. Well, we wanted to have you on again because as 2024 came to an end, you put out an article and did a podcast about, and you made sure to separate the rot economy versus the enshittification of everything. But this concept that we're all being monetized and everything is getting worse at the same time. And I think it's a really good topic for us to have because you're, in a sense, I don't think you're necessarily more hopeful than Bennett and I. And we've had a lot of guests on recently who are also quite pessimistic about the possible future of not just like the US and the internet, but like, I guess, the world. But I think an important point you're making in your blog and on your podcast is that we need to fight back.
Right.
I feel like that's a point that has been missed in our most recent recordings, which haven't been released as of us talking right now. But yeah, let's start with, are you like, for me and for the people we've talked to recently, I'm quite concerned that some of the people who, you don't mention these people in your most recent stuff, but I know that you feel the same way I do about them. But like Elon Musk, Mark Andreessen, David Sachs, all of these people have the ear of Donald Trump. They're going to be in control of the FTC. You had Lena Khan on to talk about how she's been actually going after some of these companies and trying to make a difference. But like, are you concerned? Are you more concerned than like what happens next, Ed? What do you think?
I am concerned, and I think it would be foolish not to be. It's not great having these people in power, but also these people are extremely, they have very low self-esteem and very low attention spans. And what they are the most likely thing is they're going to start pulling back consumer protections and financial protections. They want the FDIC gone. Why, I actually don't know. But also, doing these things is like, it's going to take some work, and also, to what end? For more money. They're going to get bored. Government is slow and boring. There's so much stuff you have to do, and they'll move fast and break things. You can try it in government. It does not work very well. It takes forever. Everything takes forever. No one really likes it. I think it's going to be a lot like the problem with the first Trump administration, which is what him putting a bunch of judges in. The things, regulation, the way things will be changed are going to be bad. The fact that net neutrality is out is bad. That's going to hurt people. I think the fact that Chevron was repealed is really bad. I think the fact that judges can now make the call over whether an agency was right is kind of bad as well. I think we're going to see a lot of things rolled back like that. However, the first Trump administration really proved that these people are very poor at governing, and they're going to have trouble doing all of the wackadoo things. There's going to be, the deportations is going to happen, but it's going to be very focused in states where it's going to be easy to do that. For television, it's gonna be fucking horrible. I feel for those people. It's fucking disgusting. But back to the tech stuff, I mean, these people don't even have goals. Okay, we're gonna like make it easier for us to make money, a thing we already do.
Well,
it's not. Yeah,
I just want to push back on that because I think the suggestion that they don't have goals, you're not wrong in some sense, but I think the goal ultimately, oftentimes enough, and I've noticed this with like media, for instance, when these billionaires buy media companies or Twitter, the goal isn't that they want it to operate better. It's to break it down and make it dysfunctional on purpose.
I actually don't think that's what happened with Bezos, by the way.
I'm not sure. I think it took a while.
I think he bought it like anyone would buy, like, I don't know, like a watch. He bought it like a watch.
Maybe.
And then it fell out of style, so he's like, oh, I don't want to piss off Donald Trump.
Yeah.
So LA Times is an example of someone not doing this as well. He's just a fucking idiot. He's just a rich fucking idiot, a capricious moron who wants to kiss up two fellow capricious morons. And that's the thing. It's much easier to look at the world and say, this is the plan. The powerful are doing the plan now. The plan is happening. Bezos is finally doing the plan. Soon is doing the plan. Now look at the plan. Instead of looking at it in the far more obvious way, which is, these people are just as emotional, capricious, and fucking thinly veiled in the things they care about as anyone else. I'm not saying it's less damaging.
I'm not trying to disagree with you that, like, I don't think there's some broad conspiracy. That's not my suggestion. My suggestion actually is that what happens is, my suggestion on Bluesky was that basically what happens is there's these high quality newsrooms that are doing really good work and investigative journalism that costs a bunch of money, right? And then when they do that work, they just get disparaged and called liars by a bunch of billionaires. And unfortunately, because those billionaires have such increasing reach to the public and lawyers that they can hire to just clog up the legal system, they destroy the reputations of this whatever high quality newsroom until the point where it's like a billionaire buys this high quality newsroom and then ultimately stops funding the high quality journalism and just does whatever the fuck they want with it. And that helps all of them, right?
When did that happen, though?
If you look at the Washington Post, if you look at the Los Angeles Times,
with the LA Times has been going through it for years. I'm not saying that the new owner, I forget his name, pardon me. I'm not saying he's been a great owner, and he is absolutely doing things to make Trump happy and make his other rich friends happy and killing stories. But look at the Washington Post. The Washington Post in the last year, though they've been fucked up on the endorsement, has done incredible work in tech. Help Desk is great. Their tech journalism is great. And Tashti, there are great journalists there and still great journalism happening. Washington Post has some of the best political journalism. I'm just not sure what it is you said that happened there.
Well, they're not allowed to do op-ed pieces any longer. I mean,
and that's fucking terrible. I'm not saying that there's been no effect. I'm saying that you were saying that great journalism was being defunded.
So another great example, and we're talking about large scale defunding when it comes to like when it comes to a part of journalism is op-eds. So the idea that Bezos is now telling the newsroom how they can operate and what they're allowed to report on. I mean, that is a defunding of journalism. I also think a point I made recently is that, for instance, my small town that I live in has a local newspaper that I was like, oh, that's interesting. Maybe I should get a subscription to this small town newspaper because I want to support local journalism. Well, as soon as I looked into this small town newspaper, who are they owned by? Chatham Management, like some nasty large private equity firm that goes across the country buying newspapers and making them Republican news outlets. So the concept that it's not being defunded and completely altered into large-scale propaganda, I think is like... We were
talking about the LA Times and Washington Post directly. I agree with you on that 90%. I think, again, you are seeing a grand plan where the actual answer is, when you buy a bunch of newspapers and you run them as cheap as possible, what sells? Slop, engagement bait, shit that gets people riled up. People buy shit and share shit because it pisses them off. But also, a lot of these local outlets, and it's in the TV stations as well, they're just making the same fucking thing. They're just doing the same thing. I'm not actually saying you're wrong. Yes, that is a direct example of what happens. I just don't think that anyone was like, and now the conservatism begins. Perhaps they, once they own it, they go, oh, I'm racist. Why don't I add a little bit of that mustard to the pie? Don't know why you put mustard in a pie, moving on. But nevertheless, what I'm trying to get at is we're kind of agreeing, but I just want to push you to say, I don't think these motherfuckers have a plan. I don't think they're really sitting there. I think on the whims that they have, they are choosing the conservative things they always believed in.
Well, and I think, just to interject, I think this could even be kind of an example of the rot economy, where rot begets rot, right? Local papers were struggling and dying long before private equity and a few conglomerates got involved. Most of them had, their ad space was becoming less and less valuable, and that was the principal driver of their revenue, even for ones that had somewhat stable subscriber bases, right? A lot of these
the actual answer is Craigslist and Facebook Marketplace.
Yeah, they lost the classified and they lost the local advertising, and as soon as they did that, they didn't have the subscriber base to stay them on. And so then, a bunch of extractive people who mostly are conservative because they're assholes at the top of the capital pile, come in and start doing the things they're going to do, which is
absolutely
got and let the rot beget the rot. I think, kind of getting back and zooming back in, what are the levers you see that exist as a way to resist or challenge the rot economy, the kind of worsening of all these platforms and products and things like that.
So I think a big thing to start with is that if you look at the media, as you two have very intelligently said many times, they're not very good at saying the names of the fucking people responsible and pointing at them and saying these people are fucking responsible. And I think that when they do so, and this is not a criticism, this is just where it's done, the only way it seems to be done is going, hey, these people are right-wing psychos. As a result, a lot of criticism of tech inherently starts politicized, and it starts being about right and left. I'm not saying it's wrong to do so. Ian Higgins has a great book that just came out specifically about this incredibly important stuff, about how these billionaires are right-wing and how they're doing these things in right-wing. The problem is, it's a little bit more subtle than that. The people causing the problems, the Andrew Bosworths, CTO of Meta, Sundar Pichai, Sam Altman, Mark Zuckerberg, these people are apolitical. And I know Zuckerberg's gave money over, whatever. He believes in nothing. He really believes in nothing. And thus, you don't really get the criticisms of them, and you don't just get them saying their fucking names. That's what really pisses me off. Andrew Bosworth, 2017, The Ugly. There was the internal letter he sent out saying all things are justified in growth, including bullying and terror attacks. This should be in every single article ever written about Andrew Bosworth until the day he dies. The same thing with Mark Zuckerberg and the fact that he is the reason Facebook is how Facebook is. The fact in 2008 that his growth team was buying ads to con people into joining Facebook, scaring them into believing that someone was stealing their identity. These are the things that these people have done. And the reason they've got powerful is that, for the most part, this stuff was not... It was documented, but it wasn't screamed everywhere. When we can't cover OpenAI and Facebook and all of these things without adding their names. And I know that this is kind of wanky sounding, but the hundreds of emails I get where it's just like, I fucking tell my friends who's responsible, and they're so pissed off. Now I understand why Google's broken, because of these motherfuckers. This is what changes things. This is what makes people walk away from products. This is what makes people talk about how bad the products are. And guess what? Another reason they buy these newspapers? These men are desperate for attention. They're desperate for history to reflect well on them because they got so much money. So covering them in this way that's very much like, these are the people, this is exactly what they've done, and every act they do since is a reflection of their past, I think it's necessary. And it's something where the tech media needs to change, because, I don't know, or maybe they won't, and I will continue to grow a great audience on this because it seems extremely bloody obvious.
So you think the main way, you're suggesting the main way for people like us or other journalists to fight back is to name names.
I also think it's regular people.
I see.
I also think that regular people discussing these things is the Jon Stewart effect. The reason there was such a political awakening years ago, the problem is the Conservatives got way better at it than the Democrats ever got. Jon Stewart did well at first, and then it's like, hey, what if we just make all this shit up? Why don't we just make it up? Why don't we just fucking say what we want whenever we want without any fear of anything? And that, by the way, is extremely effective, and it's exactly what we can do to tech. Just say it. What are they going to do?
So actually, this is something I wanted to I had a note about this, and I maybe you'll think this is a silly note, and if so, we can just move right on past it. But for me, you quickly brought up, and I think this is crazy because you're so right, but you quickly brought up in one of your recent podcast episodes that, you know, when you were using the new computer that you bought, you had to sign this terms and conditions, that basically said, okay, if anything bad happens that really harms you, we're going to go to arbitration. We're not going to go to criminal court. We're not going to go to civil court. We're going to go to arbitration. And I thought about that, and I was just like, damn, he's right. That's crazy that we all just signed that stuff and just moved past it. But then I remembered, like, oh, no, wait, like, this is a part of the zeitgeist already. Like, South Park in 2011 did a now quite infamous, famous episode called Human Centipede, where the boys sign up for the Apple terms of service, and basically they end up being part of an experiment to, you know, do the human centipede. And that was this moment, I think there was like an actual cultural awakening of like, oh, we have no fucking idea what we're signing when we do these TNCs. But then we all just laughed about it and moved on. And I'm curious, like, what do you think actually causes, outside of like just naming names, how do we get businesses and companies and billionaires to change the way they operate, you know?
So I think it starts with just walk out. If you don't like something, delete your fucking account. You could be deeply unhelpful to these companies. You can go in and check all the boxes to remove all your shit. You can delete as much as you can. You can unclick those things. Those things actually do matter. And I realize it sounds small, but seriously, you can do that. Services like Delete Me to remove yourself from data brokers. You can make yourself a little ungovernable, but also, and getting back to journalism, a really basic thing is we, as anyone covering anything, need to totally rebuild how it is the job is done. Because I choose OpenAI a lot, because OpenAI is probably the worst covered company out there. OpenAI, ChatGPT, everything that's written about them should have something about how the company is burning $5 billion. Every single time. Why? Because this company has they have no moat. They have no real sticky product. They have all these things. But guess what? In the last year of Better Offline, I had this worry that like, oh, regular people are going to think this is too much. So I really broke down the language. I'm just like, this company burns $5 billion. It isn't obvious what it is they'll do. And they have no real path to anything approaching AI. Most people can understand that. So if media starts talking to their readers like they're fucking morons, but on top of that, talks to them in a straightforward, non-condescending way, that has a real measurable effect. But on top of that, actually explain what's happening. What's been crazy is the amount of times I've cited my Facebook piece, for example, I wrote middle of May last year. There's no other anthology piece like that. I looked. Just a piece that says, why is Facebook shit? What happened? And this. I cite it all the time. I get emails about it every week. People being like, shit, I had no idea. The man who killed Google Search. Same deal. Give people a clean explanation for why the conditions of the world are like they are. I don't have the perfect answer here. To quote Ned Beatty, from Network, I think it is, I don't tell you to write your congressman. I don't know what to tell them. But at the same time, I can't say who, but there are people in the government who's read my work. There's hedge funds that actually discuss it. There's people who are listening.
Sure.
And the thing is, don't have to wait long. Give it a year or two. They're all going to have to fucking face this either way, because once generative AI collapses, they don't have a growth market anymore.
And just to push back on this, because I'm going to play devil's advocate here a little
Sure.
bit. I think it's fine to suggest people mention the expenditures of ChatGPT and OpenAI. I don't necessarily disagree that should be worth discussing. But I will say that a lot of people would probably push back and say, a lot of now profitable companies, or some of the largest companies in the world, for a decade plus weren't profitable. And how do you push back against that argument?
Very easily.
Okay.
So Uber is the classic example that people give. Uber, of course, the classic drops people off or stuff off company, right? Now, when I wrote How Does OpenAI Survive last year, one of the things I got from actually one of the reporters who wrote the OpenAI story, the losing $5 billion, was, well, Uber worked it out. Uber worked it out, didn't they? Wrongo. Uber's worst loss in the year, I believe, was $6.2 billion. That year, 2020, the year they could not function as a business. The year when nothing was running because COVID. Crazy that. Otherwise, Uber has burned a shit ton of money, but they've burned it entirely on a directional path, horrible labor practices as well, toward expansion into everywhere. There was always a thing that Uber did that resulted in a profit. It involved labor abuses, which the media also laundered. But putting that aside, OpenAI has nothing like that. They do not have a similar business model. OpenAI's model is the antithesis of good software business models. It gets more expensive as it scales. Their argument as well is, well, the hardware will come back. Ed, you fucking idiot. The hardware will fix this. They'll just make more chips. Bloody hell, do you know how chips are made? How hard they are to make? They're talking about ASICs, so specialized chips, just for generative AI, right? How the fuck do you scale one of those? When are you going to tape that bad boy out? The thing is, there are very clear reasons this isn't. All of these companies, what are the other companies that burn lots of money? Did they burn as much money? How much did they burn? When did they start being profitable? And how did they start being profitable? Because the answer in all of these cases is very simple, in ways that are completely different to OpenAI. Because OpenAI, at their core, has no moat, but also is based on unprofitable software that is only made profitable through chips that don't exist yet and may never exist at all.
I don't think Uber is a good example, because for me, the one that immediately comes to mind is something like Amazon, where they do disgusting labor practices, granted, but really their cash cow has nothing to do with that. Their cash cow is AWS, as far as if I remember correctly. So their cash cow is far different from what they started even as. And again, this could be an argument that someone could make where it's like, yeah, you're flushing them with cash early with, you know, private equity money or whatever. But
the most profitable part of Amazon is their marketplace. It's FBA, fulfilled by Amazon. Like, that's the thing. Like,
is it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought
AWS prints money.
Yeah, I thought AWS was their big...
Oh, they print... Oh, you're not wrong. AWS just fucking prints money. The argument is always AWS wasn't profitable at first. Yeah, they were still building up... Because the thing is with a cloud compute infrastructure, for example, it is an efficiency play. You actually do have to build out a bunch, spend a bunch of money, and then costs come down because you work out efficiencies. It's not how it works with generative AI. You can build out the data centers, but these things are power hungry, and they have a terrifying fail rate. I read in the journal it's like may have even be as high as 40% failure rate on these parts. Like, this is everything is insane. It's insane out there. It's enough to drive me crazy, and I'm already pretty wacky. There's so many parts of this that just drive me completely bonkers, because it's like, why am I the guy? I run a PR firm. Like, I'm the fucking... Why am I the guy being like, hey, yeah, fellas... Like, I am worried.
The lever you pointed to like try to give some kind of power back against like this rat was being more direct in our collective coverage of these issues. But like, how do you do that in a sustainable way, likely to meet people? Like, doesn't that then ram against like the exact problem you're describing, that these platforms are hollowed out and rooted out, that the place to reach most of the people has made it hard to reach them, that like meaningful discourse beyond like a small set of people is hard to achieve and maintain?
Is it? I mean, it's like, the thing is, the fact that Bluesky has grown has given me a lot of hope. Because if Bluesky can do this, someone else could do it to Instagram, someone else could do it to Facebook. And yes, it is that simple. They just have to get enough users. It's easier to prove with the model there. But also, say that's true. Say you have a small audience. Does that mean we don't try? Because my general thought is that the tech media still has power. The tech media still has audiences. The right and right-wing VCs have been desperate for over a decade to create their own outlets. Pirate Wires, Future. Every fucking few years they go, we're going to make our own thing. And it sucks because nobody likes it. Nobody cares. At the same time, the tech media has been spinning its wheels and has been doing kind of the same thing for years, and they're afraid, in the same way most of the media is afraid, of breaking objectivity, which does not exist. To your point earlier, Cas, people yell at you that you're lying no matter what you do.
Right.
So, in what the tech media and many parts of the media can do is, I don't know, speak bluntly. OpenAI is doing this. This is what it means. It's also important to know that OpenAI burns about $5 billion a year, and OpenAI does not have a path to profitability. Though O1 may allow you to do some things, theoretically, it is yet to prove itself as a consumer product, or really any kind of enterprise product. The use cases are not there. I know this works because I have people email me going, shit, I didn't understand that before. That's really infuriating. I just told some friend of mine that use ChatGPT, and they're like, wait, this loses them money every time? That's really funny. Some of them use it more. I don't think that it has to be that complex. I don't think it even has to be that scary. It just has to be, we need to start speaking more plainly. The reason the right-wing media is so successful, they're lying also, is that they're not particularly condescending. Joe Rogan's successful because he kind of sounds like a dunce. And he asks questions that people are like, what's that mean?
I'm like a little fraught right now because on one hand, I agree with you. But on the other hand, like, one of the things that Bennett and I have struggled with for years now, because we cover cryptocurrency, is how convoluted, complicated, and silly even being able to report on financial shit is. Like, okay, so we want to report on this guy, but this guy has registered an offshore bank account under a registrant's name. It's not under their name. So the way that we have to report it legally so that we don't get sued is we have to say it's, you know, like there's all these ridiculous, like, it inherently becomes complex, complicated, and difficult to understand and hard to report on. And I think it, like, suggesting like, oh yeah, well, media needs to do a better job of just saying it bluntly isn't necessarily fair enough to being like, yeah, but the problem is when you're trying to report it bluntly, if you say something even slightly incorrectly, you're getting sued and you might lose now, like, considering who is going to be in charge of all this shit and the Supreme Court and stuff, you know?
That is on some level kind of giving up in advance. But also on top of that, crypto is its own special freak. I don't write about crypto anymore because I don't think people care. But also, it is difficult to pull apart. But also, I don't know how to cover crypto anymore. I don't know what actually matters about it. Because it seems to exist in this kind of echoing nth dimension situation where rules and laws and logic don't seem to apply.
Isn't that what's happening with AI as well?
No.
Ed?
No, AI, the thing is with crypto is it does not follow any of the other rot economy shit. It is not obvious how this grows forever. It benefits people just through fraud, it seems, just as a way of dispensing capital to other people.
I mean,
and
AI steals content from creators and then...
That's completely different, just totally different. The
How?
kind of fraud that crypto does is they basically make up money and then somehow liquidate it, which is insane. It's insane. I actually think that crypto may be one of the things that does fall out of my thesis because I truly do not know how you do it every week because it is a frustrating and confusing industry, but also my experience is that I don't know how big crypto is as well. I actually don't know the scale of crypto anymore.
I mean, I think it's pretty difficult to assign it no value in terms of like...
Oh, I'm not saying no value.
But I just mean in terms of like Donald Trump is like Howard Lutnick, who's going to be in the incoming administration. He's going to be the Department of Commerce dealing with tariffs. This guy is everything for Tether, like the biggest, this nearly $200 billion stablecoin. Like the idea that these guys aren't able to do whatever the fuck they want now. I feel like it is just fact. Like they will be able to do whatever they want. But like that is a part of the rot economy, is it not? Like, am I wrong?
I think it's a part of it. I think the weird thing is that it's one where they kind of won. For now.
Yes, that's how I feel.
For now. Because
what does that mean?
I live in Las Vegas. I know gamblers. There is going to be someone who tries to exit this market at scale and breaks it. There will just be a point when that happens. It will become unusable. I am confident in that. The problem is that the actual people who needed to cover crypto properly fucked up years ago and allowed these people to get entrenched. Crypto is a great example of where AI theoretically could be if people were not... Like, we've got some critics. There was some good job done. Crypto was just more... The financial hooks were far easier to get in. Crypto, however, it is impossible to tell how much real money exists in it. Not saying it's small, just saying at scale, I don't know if it's as big as AI. And also,
no. Is
this even a fucking tech industry thing anymore? It just feels like an open financial crime. It feels like something where...
Enabled by technology. Right?
It's technology, but it's like big tech has not really wanted to touch it because of the financial crimes. And I think we're going to get 4 years of robber capitalism. I think it's going to be disgusting. But at the same time, how much money can come out of it? Can billions come out of it? Hundreds of millions? It's an interesting thing.
Tether, just one firm in crypto, was able to deploy multiple billions last year outside of crypto into other industries.
Which is fascinating.
To purchase satellite companies, to purchase farming companies, to purchase
AI companies.
AI company, power generation companies.
FTX invested in Anthropic. It's one of the reasons that FTX was able to make people whole.
Yeah.
So who's to say if it's bad?
Getting back to the previous thing, like about how media coverage should include this context, include these things, that to me still seems like it's running up against the problem of the entire media ecosystem is rotted out, and there's no one to fund, like, reporters having enough time to actually develop the context and the stories they cover.
Or maybe it's the editorial missions that just don't include this shit every time like they should. The Tether thing should be included every time, but also it's hard to explain. It is a challenge, and there are not enough people tasked with doing it. Most of the crypto reporters in the last few years, not all of them, Ian Allison, legend, but there are people at major publications who are pro-crypto. Fucking insane.
Sure.
Fucking crazy.
Sure,
the media
but
failed on crypto.
Just getting back to I'm still struggling with the jump to, like, how do you develop a sustainable cadre of journalists of media that's able to do in context, in deep reporting across not just tech, but looking at it more broadly, like across these different... Do we?
We don't need to build a new thing. We just need everyone to take their heads out of their fucking assholes. That's the thing. There are...
I have news for you about the last several millennia.
The rot economy begets the rot economy, I think is part of what Bennett is kind of pointing out here. And this idea that, again, the media, unfortunately, in America now, with the rot economy, is obligated to their shareholders more so than their audience.
You are misunderstanding how any media outlet works. I've got to push back as hard as possible about that.
How is that
That's not what's happening. It's so much stupider. It's so much dumber. The people at the top, they just want nothing to happen. They want their friends to feel important. But really the problem is you've got this upper editorial substrate of editors who do not know anything about technology, who go with the will of the markets, and they follow the will of the markets. It's not just top-down pressure from the rich. It's the fact that the editorial layers, the editors editing excellent writers, don't know what they're fucking doing.
They're all getting fired, Ed.
No, they're not. What are you talking about?
I'm talking about places like CoinDesk getting because they got purchased by. Hold on, like you just talked about Ian Ellison. Like I'm talking about places like CoinDesk where you have super high quality journalists like Nick D, Ian Ellison. I could name a dozen more. David Z. Morris, who's come on the show. Danny Nelson.
The legend.
A million. There's a million awesome journalists that came out of CoinDesk that reported honest, objective, fair truth, and they actually destroyed their own business by doing so. Right. And so I we have to revere that. And then you look at exactly what happened. Well, I'll tell you what happened. A Peter Thiel controlled fucking company bought CoinDesk and ruined it, and it's as simple as that. And how did they ruin it? By putting pressure on a bunch of editors who then resigned because they're not going to stick around and be like, yeah, I guess I'm a part of this compromised editorial board. So they leave, and now you're like where you're suggesting it's like, well, it's all of these editors. It's like, well, no, the good editors leave, and now what are you stuck with? A bunch of incompetent.
We're both talking about different situations, though. Both can be true. There could be examples where it doesn't work. I'm not saying I have a complete cure. I'm just saying a place where things can change is this. CoinDesk was a fucking disaster. And everyone, the second Bullish touched it. And also, people need to look around who else is friends with Bullish, because there's more people outside of crypto who are. And the problem is also, crypto, it really comes down to, crypto is where my thesis is the most challenging. Because the money is more available, and also it was really poorly understood when it grew to power, and it's still poorly understood today. And the people explaining it today are doing so in this way where they're drawn between, am I writing for the crypto industry? Am I writing for regular people? Because the regular people, I don't know a single person who has used anything with crypto. I truly don't. I have not, in the last year, in a conversation, even with reporters, I don't know who brought up crypto even once. This might be the first time I've talked about it in a year. I may have mentioned it in something. And that's the thing. I'm not saying you're actually wrong. I'm saying crypto is probably the most egregious example of where this is getting fucked up. What I am saying is you are asking for things that could change now. The answer is that beyond the billionaires and the rich people, there are people in tech media and business media who are extremely poorly informed, feel that their job is to follow trends rather than do journalism, and they put pressure on writers to cover things in a way that makes them feel good. Yeah. And this is in legacy media. This is in more new media.
You did an important episode naming names, and I think like right now we could name Kevin Roose and Casey Newton as
Kevin Roose.
Yeah, like these guys
I actually give Roose a little bit of credit in that he did put the boots to the Chris Dixon a bit, but I will say Casey Newton, coward of the year. Yeah, because Kevin was kind of cooking. Kevin was kind of like beating his ass a bit. He's like, well, let's move on. As Kevin was getting to the good shit, Kevin did fuck up. He fucked. I wrote about it in 2021. Wrote about it in 2022. He fucked up. He actually really messed up there. Yeah. And it's laughable that he kept his position. I think that he is a good guy who is easily won over, as proven by the fact that he was scared of Bing.
By the way, I think I really hate that we always have to, like, if we...
Oh, I'm not saying that. You'll notice that I'm not saying that about Casey. You'll notice that those words did not leave my fucking mouth.
It's just so funny to me that when we criticize people, we're like, well, on a personal level, I don't know them, and they're probably great.
Oh, I know Kevin.
Like, you know, that's cool.
I think Kevin is credulous.
It's perfect.
and
It's perfectly
excitable.
It's perfectly acceptable to still be like, also, it's fine if you like this person and they did a shitty job with this thing. Like, that's fine, you know?
I mean, I was just saying it because it was how I felt. I don't think of many of the words before they leave my mouth. But I think that those two in particular, with Hard Fork, they did like an Amazon drone thing as well, which is fine, and I get why they did it, but it's also like, oh my God, do you want to do a little bit of history about how many fucking times companies have promised to deliver things with drones? Do you want to talk about the fact that this is probably not a profitable or sustainable or possible thing? They're never scaling this shit. What the fuck are you talking about? But you got to accept it. It's New York Times, and they have this view of like, the Times has got to look at everything as a cautious optimist. Where's the caution? Anyway, I'm quite lost on where I got to that point, but but there's I will give you an example from within AI. So Wall Street Journal. I would argue that Wall Street Journal does probably the best investigative reporting in tech. By far. I think the information isn't far behind, yet the information also seems quite pro-AI. It's very strange. But nevertheless, the Journal, their problem is they bury stuff. They bury stuff deep within their stories because they lack the ability to have subjective thought. One of my favorite ones is, I'm just going to quote something. This is from a piece about AI hardware. New engineering challenges also often arise with larger clusters. Meta researchers said in a July paper that a cluster of more than 16,000 of NVIDIA's GPUs suffered from unexpected failures of chips and other components routinely as the company trained an advanced version of its Llama model over 54 days. What? They just have shit breaking? We talk about NVIDIA all the time. Like Jensen Huang is pissing gold and shitting golden geese that shit further golden eggs. But we don't talk about the fact that there's very clearly a failure rate problem because a lot of this coverage doesn't have any connection to the very good chips reporters. There is context needed here, an opinion needed here, an actual analysis. Readers, listeners, they want to be told not what to think, but given far more information about how to think about stuff.
Yeah, though, like the Wall Street Journal in specific has always been very cautious in the voice they strike in their news coverage.
I agree.
They have a lot of lawyers on every single story they publish.
I'm sure. And also, you have to realize a lot of these lawsuit situations are happening in crypto because there's so much money involved.
Yeah.
With AI, they're not suing you because you say that this shit's going to burst. They're not. Sam Altman's not going to. Sam Altman, you have to know the ones like Sundar Pichai is not suing you. Google's not suing you. If they start doing that, we are in full authoritarianism and that's the time to be scared. But that ain't fucking happening. They want the world to be apolitical. They want to be left alone so that they can continue burning money and making themselves more money. That's why they're so horrifying.
Does Mark Andreessen just want to be left alone?
No. Andreessen wants to work out why the worm in his brain is making him so angry. Mark Andreessen read 2 comprehensive biographies of Hitler in 2022. I like mentioning that because it's one of the most insane fucking things. I'm kind of paraphrasing Succession here. It's like, did you miss the Easter eggs? And it's so weird.
I like where you're coming from a lot here. And I think as Bennett and I were 2 of the longest serving critics of Tether and Bitfinex, which, we won't get into all of it, but like we did it for a really long time. And I think a big part of our success is you're right, that it was about sheer like mentioning number size, mentioning lawsuits, mentioning like re-mentioning things over and over and over again, repeating them, making sure people understood like this is not some great startup. Like this is a business fraught with problems. And I think you're right. I also think that part of our weakness, if I'm going to be honest about this, is that ultimately you can only repeat something so many times before people go, okay, and moving on. You know what I mean?
I want to say you're right, and you are, I think, in crypto, because crypto, how do you explain what's wrong with it? It's fraudulent, Tether's bad, but there's real money coming out of it. It's actually quite hard to explain what the real problem is with it. I'll give you an example. I wrote The Rot Economy in February 2023. It took until last week for people to take it seriously. Last week. So I did repeat myself again and again. And the thing is that sometimes it's not just, and this I'm paraphrasing Darren Acemoglu, he's from MIT economist. He said that when it comes to ideas, it takes time. It's about putting them out there, not necessarily that they'll change everything the second you put them out there. It is about making sure that there is a record of these people, because eventually the news, the things shift, things change. Sam Bankman-Fried, the whole collapse of Terra Luna, all of that was one of those moments. And I think that though crypto is higher now, I think that a lot of harm was avoided because a lot of people had written the problems of crypto, but also Sam Bankman-Fried really revealed how fucked up the coverage of crypto was. I think Sam Bankman-Fried is an example of how the media failed the public probably more than they've ever failed them. And I'm not just talking about Roos. I'm talking about CNBC. I'm talking about the story that went out a couple weeks before everything collapsed, where they went to Sam Bankman-Fried's house and saw his dog and his Camry and all that bullshit. It's just crypto is so much more fucked than everything else. I'm
not even trying to be argumentative with you today, Ed, because I agree with you I agree with you on most of this, but I am saying, like, when I reflect on financial crime over the past 40 years or whatever, it's like, how good was the financial reporting on Enron before that shit went
terrible
down? Right?
Yeah, with the exception of Bethany and
exactly.
There's always the exceptions.
Bethany McLean, right?
Bethany McLean, thank you. Holy shit. Bethany McLean, yeah, she did great reporting. But like, or for that matter, Bernie Madoff is a perfect example of like...
CNBC also made me think of Elizabeth Holmes and Theranos.
Holmes was a great PR example of just how much people lie.
Well, I think Holmes is a great example of actually media succeeding. Like, Wall Street Journal, Murdoch was an investor in Theranos, and they were like, we're going to report on this. We want to find out the truth. And Rupert Murdoch was like, do it. I want to know what the deal is. That is actually like a billionaire who's
Did Murdoch say that? Did Murdoch actually?
Yes.
He refused to kill the story under pressure. He refused to kill the story. Part's documented. His motivations for what he was thinking and feeling are somewhat more speculative.
Ultimately,
I did not know that.
Ultimately, it doesn't fucking matter what he was thinking. He let the story go ahead because he wasn't trying to control the editorial and the newsroom. So, like, the idea that Murdoch allowed this to go forward, well, that's a good example of media operating properly. Things like Enron or Bernie Madoff is where you go like, oh, wow, that's complete financial reporting failure. And that's where I get...
I think you have one part of the Theranos story wrong. Did you read any of the press about Theranos beforehand? Because the reason Theranos was able to do what they did...
reporting came out when this was still only like a $6 billion company or whatever, $15 billion company.
Okay, so just $6 billion?
Sure.
With
but like, it was non-public. Like, patient trials ended under the pressure of the interviews and stuff.
Okay, then that worked, but they were still able to grow a lot. That is still a failure of them. I think Carrie did great, but also, like, what? Like,
you're coming from you know PR better than we do. Like, the idea that there's going to be, you know, public relations work for these massive tech firms. Of course that's going to happen. Of course there's going to be positive reporting on dream shots that don't make any sense. That I'm not necessarily surprised by, and I'm not even going to push back against it that much. Like the idea of, oh, we have this blood test where all you need is this much blood. Like, well, that's a fun story to report. You're right that you should get into the weeds, and ultimately Carrie Root did, right? Where you're like, okay, ultimately it did happen, and the media reported responsibly. When it comes to Enron or Bernie Madoff or SBF, there was no pushback for a very long time. I think you're right. And like, those are better examples of where we're at now. And that is my concern, is that what if there's no pushback ever? Like, what if we're past the phases of this where it's like, sometimes there's pushback on financial criminals and then we get into a lull and everyone's happy. But it kind of feels like we're entering this weird hellscape where...
I want to give you some hope.
Okay,
I actually really do.
Yeah, please.
So I got into PR in 2008. My job was so much easier for the first few years. It was pitching it, like, I pitch fucking startups to reporters. And the reason I'm good at my job is I read their stuff and actually pitch them stuff that would fit in. I also have pretty good quality bar, and if I smell shit, I don't work with it. I don't need that on my soul. Very anxious person. But over the years, you have watched the collapse of the real glad handling media. It's still there. The fact that Kara Swisher lasted this long is a disgrace. Same with Scott Galloway. They are so much worse than Bruce and
We've
Newton.
got an episode about them.
Bruce and Newton they've fucked up a lot. And I think Newton, when he went off to Gary Marcus, I think the AI skeptic piece is a morally reprehensible thing to do. I think Casey should be fucking ashamed of himself. I think he's a coward.
And I want to, well, hopefully we'll have a link. We're going to have a link in the show notes.
We can talk about this now, but
for people, just to your previous discussions about this, because I think they're excellent. Sorry, Ed, I just want to let people know that, yeah.
Nevertheless, and we should talk about that in a minute, but over time, you have seen the growth of a great deal of critical press. You have seen the fact that Meredith Whittaker isn't in the media, right? But the fact that there are like 2 or 3 Meredith Whittaker profiles every 3 minutes, I think now, in Wired. Just Wired loves writing, like, Meredith Whittaker thinks this. That alone is a good sign, because Meredith Whittaker is extremely fucking aggressive. She is extremely aggressive in anti-tech stuff. The fact that Cory Doctorow is so prevalent, that enshittification is so discussed, this is a sign that criticism of tech is growing and it's mainstream. The fact that Jon Stewart had Lena Khan on, the fact that Lena Khan was so popular with the media. I'm not saying things are perfect. I have many critiques, but compared to when I started, I have never seen a more vivid and aggressive group of critics. Molly White, the existence of Molly White is actually kind of magical. She is a fucking great person, a great writer, a great researcher, incredibly well known, big audience. And also, a woman in tech who knows her tech. Most fucking men are me. It's fucking brilliant. Gary Marcus, I have a lot of thoughts about that perhaps I'll keep to myself. However, the fact that Gary Marcus is in national newspapers, and that's a good thing. Criticism has grown. The critiques have grown. You see, I have a fucking book with Penguin Random House called Why Everything Stopped Working. Penguin Random House is putting money in this shit. Better Offline is going to hit its 3rd season, probably in the next few months. iHeartRadio backs that. The era of criticism is far from dead. It's popular as well, and that's the really thing. Putting aside morals, I don't believe in things. I simply exist, and then I die. However, it's popular. It does traffic. It's popular with regular people, which means it's probably going to stick around and only grow. Look, if people don't do this, I'm going to do very well. I'm very excited about my future doing this shit. I love doing it. I do it because I hate what they've done to the computer, but I also do it because it's fun to write about and people care. The reactions I get to my work are fucking insane. If that is the reaction of consumers, that's amazing. But also, there are so many bloody critics. We are far from hopeless. We are far from in some sort of desert of critiques. In fact, the fact that your podcast has kept on this long, despite how complex and ridiculous that industry is only a sign that this is absolutely doable. Look at CoffeeZilla.
Yeah.
Like, it isn't perfect. It isn't right now. But good Lord, it's better than it was 2 years ago and the year before that and the year before that. It's not like we went from having a bunch of criticism to not having any. It's trending upwards aggressively, and there's money in it. There's traffic in it. There's something here. And I trust my gut on this one. And yeah, it's going to get scary. It's going to be scary with how Elon Musk acts. However, even then, still going to work. Like, I actually don't know whether he's going to really sue reporters. I don't know how, aggressive he's going to be. We really don't know yet. That is a question mark.
Yeah, but it is a pretty terrifying question mark.
It is. Oh, God, yes.
And the oligarchy in general right now, that the vibe of, like, this is really happening. Like, there is no, like, hypothetical what if whatever that it's the
thing people have warned about.
Yeah, like, we're here, I think is quite, to me, I want to be hopeful and I want to think about ways to fight back, and I appreciate you sharing all of this. I still, like, it's hard. You live in Nevada, Ed. I live in California. Bennett and I covered, there was an attempt to make a blockchain city in Reno, Nevada,
right,
years ago, that failed utterly. I don't know how much money is left in all of that. I think there's still some semblance of something, but it's not what it was going to be. But here in California now, what's happening is they're doing something called California Forever. And it's brought to you by like Mark Andreessen and, you know, all these tech bros. And the concept is quite similar in that it is going to be a smart city. It is going to exist south of the Bay so that they hopefully don't have to deal with, you know, things like societal issues like homeless people and drug use and things that come with not having hyper wealthy individuals in your neighborhood. So they're hoping to fix that by creating their own city of strictly hyper wealthy people. And I can't help but feel quite pessimistic about like, these are the people in control of the reins of power. Like they're the ones now whispering in Trump's ear. And while voicing criticism is of course necessary and I'm all for it and that's what we do, it does sometimes feel like you're screaming into a void. Don't you feel like that sometimes, Ed, or no?
Sure. Like, of course. When I started the show, I felt like that. Just the punk music.
Yeah.
Punk's hopeful. Punk is not ever accepting the fact that it's never pretending that things are great. But the message and the verve and the rhythm and everything behind punk music is that fuck this, fight back. You can look at these things and be scared. It's fair to be scared. It's fair to feel pessimism. Okay, accept that. So we just fucking give up? We assume that nothing will work? Hell no. We have to at least fucking try. It is scary. But the thing I just said about critiques and more that was me trying to say critics and I tried to save it, but it didn't work anyway. The thing I just said about critics and how we've never had more, that is only going to increase as things get more challenging. And yeah, it is scary. Yeah, there are things that could go horribly wrong. I'm not going to lie and be like, everything's going to be fine. Nobody will be hurt. But we have to, if anything, have an emotional shift where it's like in our small parts of what we do, we have to fight back. We have to, at the very least, document what is happening in detail with what we believe in it, with the context that matters to give people something. Because guess what? If we, as people who have any kind of audience, feel some lack of hope, how do our listeners feel?
Yeah.
How do they feel? So no, I will not sit here and just be like, oh, well, nothing will change. Fuck that. I don't know if it'll work, but I should fucking try. And for guys who are so pessimistic about this, you do seem to be trying very hard and you still continue to try. So I understand your pessimism. I really do. I deeply, deeply do. But the best thing you can do is keep going, because you know what? The only other choice is giving up.
This is honest to God why I wanted to have you on, because I felt like after we had two brilliant minds on, Joey Politano and Sean Tuffy.
Yeah.
And we were discussing just this administration and just there was nothing good to say. You know what I mean? There is nothing positive to say other than like, well, maybe they self-implode and even that's going to be a disaster, you know? And so I think we need to have someone on to say, yes, that's all true. We're not denying that, but it's okay to try to fight back and talk loud and be the voice of the voice of reason amongst a world of crazy. I don't know.
More clarity.
Yeah.
Because you want to know why the right has been so effective with media? It really is much more simple than racism. It's because there are a lot of people who have a worse experience living than they should. There are tons of people, young men, tons of them, but plenty of people who just feel like the world is kicking them in the nuts all the time. And you want to know how that's done? Tech. Tech is a great weapon for it. Now, but they don't know really where to push it. They go to the left, center-left things, and they have a bunch of people saying positivity stuff, which is good, and we should hear that, but doesn't really seem to address their problems. Doesn't really seem to address them.
I agree with that.
Even like they're smart. There is a lot of condescension in the media, and that sometimes is not deliberate. When someone reads a big story of facts and they have no idea what the fuck to do with that, they feel stupid. And why wouldn't you? You have a bunch slop of facts. So they go and they listen to Joe Rogan and listen to Theo Von. They go, wow, this guy, he asks really obvious questions. When I spoke to Zephyr Teachout, an expert on anti-corruption, my first question was, what's corruption? There are so many questions that the media fails to ask, and so many ways in which they fail their readers and their listeners by not just being like, you know what? Yeah, your shit sucks. Here's why. Here's something that you experienced. When I did Never Forgive Them, and I did that laptop bit, What I did was I got a cheap-ass laptop and I ran through exactly how dog shit it was, how much you advertised to, how slow this was, and extrapolated from there that hundreds of millions of people very likely have this experience. That I have never got such a response to. I thought it was a pretty obvious idea. When I did it, I'm like, this is just going to seem like, what the fuck? My agent emailed me. I had people like, wow, that was so good. And the reason is because instead of just being like, and every computer is fine, because that's, if you look at the reviews of the Acer Aspire 1, they're good. They give them high scores. They treat these things as if the premise of people's existence, that people know, regular people know, fucking sucks. They treat it like it's normal. And that does isolate people. And then over on the right, you've got people giving them extremely convenient excuses. Migrants, the woke, the trans in the bathroom, what have you. Yeah. Things that make them feel better. I'm not saying that's right, but it's far more effective than being like, well, if you look at the facts, actually, your life's very good. The economy's great for you. You should be happy. The Will Stancil brain is so much more fucking common, and it's everywhere in the media. And guess what? If you talk down to people and you don't actually teach them anything, you go, you should know this already. Oh, you should. You don't explain these things as they're human beings, because guess what? Just because you're a real smart motherfucker doesn't mean that you know everything.
This is so I had an opportunity to talk to Alison Morrow at CNN, and she published this piece, and one of the things I said to her was, when I started covering crypto and like being critical of it, and I know you'll appreciate this because you're in Vegas, one of the things that I felt like I was trying to do was convince these people that what they were doing was going to cost them money and they were going to lose money and stuff. And that suddenly at some point I realized I was yelling at gamblers in a casino on a slot machine and telling them like, yo, that slot machine, you're going to lose money at it. And they were like, do you think I don't understand what a fucking slot machine is, my guy?
They're addicted to stuff.
Yeah. And for like, I had to have the recognition to be like, I'm not doing this effectively. If I'm trying to reach out to the people in the casino, I've lost. I need to reach out to the people not in the casino yet and tell them what the casino is offering for real versus like, okay, I want to try to stop these people from hurting themselves already when they're fully aware of what they're doing. And I think you make like there's a compelling point of like we're almost in that part of the cycle with media as well.
I agree with you, and I want to take like a slight aside from it as well.
Yeah.
What I'm really getting at is that one of your things you've done well, and something I did when I wrote about crypto, is the condition of crypto is not really about tech, it's about society. It's about the fact that wealth accumulation in the modern world is bordering on impossible. It was meant to be you go to college, you work hard, get married, you have 2.4 children, you buy a house, all works like clockwork. And then it was like, we'll do day trading. And the media did a dog shit job of stopping people day trading in the 2000s.
Yep.
I'll just give money to my financial advisor. Not that the media ever really explained what one of those was, what it did, what good looked like, what bad looked like. Okay, well, I'll work really hard. I'll go to college, I guess. Oh, I went to college and I still can't get a job. All my shit's more expensive. But I read the news and the news says that actually my shit's better than it was. But I feel bad. In the case of crypto, it was, I can't accumulate wealth. So I'm going to go in the big illegal slot machine and I'm going to fucking try because I'm desperate and scared.
Yeah.
And by approaching people and going, no, only idiots would touch this. No, you couldn't possibly. Or alternatively being like, if you'd invested in Ethereum 1,000 days ago, you could have made this much money. Both of those are wrong. As is the humoring of the idea of crypto as some sort of valid thing. There is probably some value to saying, yeah, if you want to try a big illegal slot machine, this might work if you get lucky in the way that people often are not. Or if you have some way in early on a project, sure. This is honestly just a scaling of allowing people access to cons. That's what it is. Because people feel conned by society, so there is now a legal con you can join. And now that Lena Khan is gone, and now that the SEC no longer has Gensler, well, they'll be allowed to sell more cons to more people, and more people will lose money. But it's rarely explained as a financial and social and psychological condition. It's rarely explained in a way that actually has empathy for the people involved. Yeah. I was on crypto groups in Telegram, saying like Rutger Hauer speech in the end of Blade Runner, things I've seen. But it's like, you'd see guys in India and the Philippines screaming. They'd be like, I put my money into this, I need this to work. the desperation off of these people. How does that is more indicative of the problem than anything. And journalists don't seem to have this inherent, and this is something I said in the piece as well, there's no love for the user, there's no concern for the user, there's no thought of like, if someone reads this and makes a bad decision, I've hurt them. It goes back to when I was reviewing video games. I used to fucking crush shit. And I used to say when I'd get in a lot of trouble for it was, actually, 30 quid, 40 quid. Mate, like, that's a lot of money. We get these games for free, but people pay for these. This might be the only game they can afford this year. Do you want it? And do you want them to buy some shit? And they'd be like, you're being dramatic. And perhaps I was. But it needs to get back to, who are we actually writing for? Who is this for? Yeah. What is the net effect of what we are doing every day? Because people feel fucking hopeless, and people are aware that the media is not really serving them. The right-wing media feels like it's serving people.
Yeah.
It's serving them to their, like, but it has the appearance of it. Andrew Tate is famous because he offers grown men things that 13-year-olds want. Sex, boobs, cigar, money, pile of money. Strong man lift all the time. Not gay. Nope. No, that's not what this is.
It's not gay to kiss a man.
No, it really is like the not gay song from Popstar. Have you ever seen it? But that's the thing. It's like this very basic thing, and it works because guess what? When you look at the rest of the media, it's like, okay, I'm a miserable motherfucker, and I have no hope. Where am I going to look? Oh, wait, convenient excuses over here.
Right.
And this isn't even a new phenomenon. MGTOW has been around a long fucking time. The media needs to start operating on a principle of, how about this? Regular people are reading this and making decisions as a result of what I write.
My last question is, you talk about this easy solution that the right offers for a lot of this stuff. And generally, I would say that Bennett and I are left-leaning, but Crypto Critics Corner is just a podcast about crypto and whatever. What do you think is the way to, like, what is the alternative to that simple, like, blanket, like, oh yeah, we'll blame the immigrants or we'll blame the whoever, like, they're the problems. So what is the alternative to that? Like, how do you have a simple, forthright statement that you can counter that with? Because I think, especially with something like crypto, it's quite difficult to have a counter to something like that. You know what I mean?
I'm going to speak a little broadly, because crypto is just its own freaky condition.
Okay.
And also, the damage has been done so thoroughly that it's going to take decades to work it out. When people failed on crypto, they failed society. And people are losing money all the time, and the rich people are getting richer because of it. It's a disgrace, like, really disgusting. But on a wider scale, what these people on the right do is they do sell hope. That there are answers, and some of them are made up, but what they actually do is they talk to their people. And I must be clear, I'm not advocating for any of these people. But here's a really good place to start. One of my least favorite things is people saying Joe Rogan's bad. He's a fucking dumbass, and the people he brings on are sometimes bigger dumbasses than him. He's a pretty good interviewer. It's a well-produced show. It's high quality. Don't know if the content's high quality, but it's well mastered. But also, Joe Rogan will sit there and go, why'd that happen? Yeah, that's crazy. Guess what? That's how most people, even the most intelligent people you are. They don't know, not everyone knows everything. So if you start from this position of, hey, I should ask questions that seem very obvious, that will help your reader. That will help your listener. But on top of that, the right-wing people sell hope. Horrible hope, corrupt hope, but something. That there is an answer, there can be answers, that you are not bereft of industry. And they use that to mechanize anger. But guess what? There is actual space for positive masculinity. And positive masculinity, and was like, you turn gay. If only it was that easy. Jesus Christ. Seems like I'd have more fun. I love clothes. Seems like I could love them more. I could dress more interestingly. It'd be way more fucking fun. But the point is, men in general are so scared of discussing their emotions because they're cowards. They're cowards, but also men can't even discuss hope or inspiration. These things have been taken from us by the right. Because the left is, not all of the left, I think some of them, like Hassan is, I don't know if I agree on everything, but he gets people interested. And he had a really good interview on Pod Save America, which is a sentence I never thought I'd say. And what he did was he blankly explained the errors that were made in a way that was very digestible. But fundamentally, if we want to fight back against this, we have to give people hope, but we also have to treat them like human fucking beings, and the things we make need to speak to their problems and actually what's happening to them, rather than this I should write about the markets. Well, where's AI going? Who gives a fuck? If you can't prove where it's going, say it could go here, but here's where it could also not go. When you describe the things you're describing, describe them in terms that actually apply to a person to be reading it. Oh, but the business people are reading it. I do public relations and B2B products as well. Guess what? Same fuck. They're also human. You wouldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe that the business people also read stuff and want it explained to them simply. Matt Levine is one of the best living financial writers. And his stuff is so straightforward and so fun and so human. It's brilliant. And yeah, it's written for fucking traders and financial perverts, just like me. I'm the pervert side. But the point I'm getting to slowly is hope, excitement, caring. These are things out of the media right now, on the left and the center. It doesn't feel like many people writing about tech actually give a fuck about the computer. And guess what? Regular people do. Regular people love the computer. They wish the computer wasn't so annoying. They wish the computer was it. They want to go back to Facebook working and Instagram working. They still get value out of these things even though they fucking suck. So coming at it and saying, listen, this thing you experience every day that pisses you off, I have an answer. I have a person. Look at this asshole. But also, you're not stupid. You're not stupid for feeling bad. Do you know how annoying it must be for someone who's struggling to pay their fucking bills to read a CNN article going, well, actually, the economy's great. Is there a problem with the economy? Ooh, fuck you. God damn. What a disgraceful, condescending way of looking at people. And it's how a lot of the media works. And it's a disgrace because it could be so much better and so much good would be done. Because guess what? A lot of these corporations, they really don't want bad headlines. They're fucking terrified of them. You think the CEO of the company's sitting there looking at the numbers? No. They look at CNN and USA Today, and if USA Today says they're a fucking bell end for doing something, they'll freak the fuck out. Their wife, who they barely talk to, will email them through their assistant that this article came out, and now they're embarrassed. And now Tarquin and Quebtin, their children, are at school being made fun of. And that's the thing. I know I'm saying a lot of random stuff, but fundamentally, the way that we, as communicators, as people in the media, treat people, needs to be more human and needs to approach the real fucking consequences of these things. Perhaps Tether isn't bothering people. Perhaps Tether doesn't really scare the average person, but you know what does? Some poor motherfucker inside the Celsius lawsuit, in the bankruptcy thing, talking about how they fucking lost everything. The emails I got when I wrote about fucking Celsius, and it's quite Molly White, and the things she's found. The responses I got were like, fuck, I finally get this. This is horrible. It's no longer just crypto perverts who are losing their money. It's real people who were conned by something that seemed honest. That is what is lacking. The actual consequences and acting as if there are them, rather than what you hope will happen in an industry and what you would like the world to look like.
Well, that seems like as good of a place to wrap it up as any. Make sure to check out Better Offline and Where's Your Ed for your podcasting and newsletter needs. And
betteroffline.com. That's where I put all my links because there's too many of them now.
And thank you very much for joining us, Ed.
My absolute pleasure. Love coming on.